discussing these creative interplays of constituent parts that are creating the emergence of something new, right?
Right.
And then we're talking about that's what inspiration is. So when you have different constituent parts coming together,
Yeah. See, when Einstein spent all of these years in his restless attempt to understand the unified theory and all of the things he was trying, he had done enormous amounts of research, and and there was a creative interplay of all of these discoveries and successful and unsuccessful, the successes and the failures. All of that had its creative interplay, developing of a potential to emerge in a whole new realization. So that eventually E equals mc squared was the realized potential in its synergy emerging from the creative interplay of all of his success and failures at an attempt to figure it out. He couldn't figure it out, but the synergy that was developed had a potential to emerge into an inspired realization.
so this is inspiration consciousness, and this is different from magical consciousness and rational consciousness. But inspiration gets all the magic, right? All those things. It's a holistic model. So in order to get the inspirational consciousness, you have to incorporate ritualistic consciousness and
Yeah,
rational
it
consciousness.
appears that it all is a part of that creative interplay of, of, of the constituent parts of inspiration.
So is inspiration consciousness non-dual? Because magical consciousness is very dual, right? There's me, and then there's this separate God up there, and he's controlling everything. Then we move to superstition consciousness. It's the same thing, but it's me, and there's this magical God up there, but I can do something to influence him.
Right.
Then we get to
Ritual.
ritual consciousness, where you're saying, okay, you're kind of moving beyond the idea of a separate God with this, right? But you're just saying, if I do these certain things, then good things come about.
I am somehow aligning. I can't understand it, I can't explain it, but I know that I'm getting closer into an alignment with the flow.
But if you're doing the ritual thing, you still believe in a separate God that is doing this, right? So it's
Right.
the same thing as magical, right? Why is it different?
Well,
Except, and why is
well,
it different from superstition?
then you're not trying to influence God. You're trying to align with God. You're not trying to change God. You're trying to change yourself to get in alignment with God.
And then you move up to
Myth-
rational,
mythological.
mythological. And then what was that? The difference?
Mythological is where you can't explain it, but somehow you can tell stories that illustrate a truth that you can't really explain in rational, logical sentences. It just makes you feel more in alignment with God.
So they're metaphorical truths and stuff.
Yeah.
And then you move to rational, where now you're doing scientific explanations for it and stuff. And why is that beyond the mythical?
Well, it's see, it's transcending or dissolving your dependence upon this idea of a separate reality that you need to somehow uh, get along with and cope with. You're beginning to take responsibility for your life rather than dumping the responsibility on something totally beyond yourself, separate from yourself. But
And yeah, that's that. So so then you go to move to mythical, or no, to intuition.
yeah,
And so one of the questions is, where does intuition come from? So what was that guy, right, the Hare Krishna guy? He says intuition comes from your past lives and things that you already knew from there. That's where your intuition, or Plato said it comes from the world of the forms. That's where your intuition comes from. That before you're born, you're in this world of the forms where you know things, you see everything as forms, and this world is just a reflection of the world of forms. That's why when you're in this world, you have the intuitions, and that's why you already know things.
yeah. Well, see, both of them may be right, but they're both different ways of saying the same thing that I was saying earlier, that it's coming to know what you didn't know you already know. That wisdom is there. It's somehow a part of us. and we just haven't gotten in touch with it. Now, whether it's a part of us because it's from our past life or from the form, or we, those are various different explanations. All we have an appreciation for is that it is a part of us. It's there. It's somehow it's within and surround and supports. It's a part of our being somehow. And intuition is coming to know what we didn't know was already there.
So any attempt to try to say where it comes from, is that a conspiracy theory? Like,
Well, yes.
but we get that later
No, that's when you don't understand something, it's easy to settle for coming up with an explanation. But you can also just celebrate the fact that it is and that you don't have to explain it. And that's what then enables you to move beyond.
So how is inspiration greater than intuition? Why is it the next level?
Yeah, well, again,
It's difficult.
It's hard to create a separate distinction there, but it's just, well, I don't know that I could add anything more to what I already said about that.
Okay, so I want to talk about an interesting thing, Grandpa. You remember? We'll talk about like a couple other things, hopefully. But the egg, and you know how there needs to be the growth of the egg and everything, and you talk about there's those 4 forces,
Right.
that needs to be. What are those forces, and how is this relate to the egg hatching and everything, and maybe even you can relate it to like Sarah and Isaac and
Yeah.
all that.
Well, see, I've articulated a conspiracy theory that in every emergence there are 4 forces at work, and it's best illustrated in a human mother. See, in order for a baby to be born, once it's impregnated and inside the womb, there are 4 forces that need to work in harmony with one another, and they all need to be strong and capable of doing their thing. There's the force, the conservative force that guards the gains, that protects that protects the infant while it's growing in the womb, so that it's that conservative force that's holding things together. Then there also has to be the force that's pushing out, that's trying to stretch the womb, because if that force wasn't strong enough to begin to stretch the womb, the baby wouldn't be born either. So if the baby's not held in, it can't be born. And if that stretching, that pushing, that expanding the womb isn't working, the baby can't be born. The baby can't grow up, get stronger. So those 2 forces, the force of conservation and the force of liberation, the conservative and the liberal force, have to both be in work, and they have to work in harmony. And if the liberal force overpowers, then it'll break out before the baby's strong enough. If the conservative force overpowers the liberal, the baby will die inside the womb. Now, in addition, these are the more obvious forces at work. There are 2 less tangible but equally important and equally powerful forces. The one force is liberation, or relaxation, or what did I call it? Conservation,
Reformation.
and dissolution. The willingness to just let go and relax. So the mother has to have that force, allow that force to work too, just to be able to relax and not try to either hold it in or push it out, but to just relax. So the mother has to be able to move back and forth. But the fourth, which is the transcendent member of the 4 forces, is the transformation. A mother must have a vision, a strong enough vision of what it would be like, and anticipate what it would be like, and look forward to what it would be like to be a mother, to have the baby outside. She needs to have a vision. If she's afraid of being a mother, afraid that she's not going to be capable of being a good mother, and afraid that she can't enjoy her children, and there are mothers who don't, that force isn't working well. They're just scared to death. But when all four of the forces of conservation, uh, reformation, reforming, dissolution, and transformation is occurring, then emergence can occur. And it's the same way um, with the story of Isaac and Jacob, etc. See, the mother had the vision of a new possibility, and she was willing to go along with um, cultivating that. Um, Jacob, Jacob, no, Esau wanted to hang on to things. Jacob wanted to make things happen, and the father was willing to just say, I can't figure out what needs to be done. I don't want to side with him. I don't want to side with him. I don't want to side with her. I'm willing to let go and allow something greater to occur. So all four of those forces were at work in those four members of the family.
Any other thoughts there, Gabba?
No?
So you're saying it's like an emergence, but the thing is, didn't Jacob or Jacob's dad like Esau better, like because he was a hunter, and Isaac liked Esau better?
Well, he did at the beginning, but eventually he began to see that that's not going to work.
But the mom apparently liked Jacob better.
Well, she did too, but see, we always, at the beginning, but we always give her hell for being a badass, when in fact she had a vision of a whole new level of consciousness, a whole new culture, a whole new form of existence.
How so? Like, what gives you this idea?
Well, she wasn't willing to settle for the status quo. She knew that something new was emerging. At first, she had an idea of what that was, but I'm reading between the lines, she also began to realize that she couldn't make it happen, that there was something new emerging, but she had to be the force of transformation. She had to participate in that whole family structure in a way that allowed for an opening to occur. She had to have and instill the vision in the family that a whole new possibility existed.
Any other thoughts there, Gabba?
No?
So, what about? So you said that Jacob was trying to make things happen. What was Esau doing? Trying to hold on to things?
Yeah, he was trying to keep, this is working just fine. Why do you want to change it?
It's conservation. So, the interesting thing is, remember Esau was like, I want to eat the stew so bad. And then because he wanted to eat the stew so bad, he gave up his birthright to Jacob because Jacob had the stew so that he could get the stew. What does this represent?
Well, again, this is a whole interplay until eventually, see, at the beginning of that story, whether it's a myth or a legend or whatever, the beginning of the story, the four people in the scenario didn't have a clear role, one of the four roles, but slowly it emerged that each began to play a role, one of the four roles in that emergent process.
So Jacob wrestled with the angel. What does this represent? And Israel means wrestle with God, and Jacob's name was changed to Israel, wrestling with the angel, wrestling with God. What does this represent?
Well, again, that's, you can't get there from here. See, Jacob was make it happen. He was a reformer. He was going to make it happen, and he did everything. He was a sly Trumpian sort of guy. He was trying to make things happen, come up with all kinds of scenarios, shenanigans, etc. And finally, he began to realize this is not going to happen. And so he said, so all the things that he prepared was symbolized. He put them back on the other side of the river. In other words, he let go of all the homemade plans of promotion that he'd come up with. He put them all on the other side of the river, and he went back by himself.
Didn't he also send them all to Esau? Like he sent like caravans to Esau each time. Like, that was after. Okay,
Yeah.
yeah.
And so by letting go, by willing to let go of all of his homemade plans of self promotion. He was left alone to wrestle with God, with what I call Shirley, wrestling with Shirley. Surely there's got to be a better way, and that's what wrestling with the angel, I understand, is all about.
So he wrestled with Shirley. Surely there's got to be a better way, and that's how he got. It was wrestling with the angel. Did he get in the flow? Was this the
Yeah,
flow?
yeah.
But then why did he get hurt though? Why did he hurt his hip?
Well, because you always experience the consequences of all of your shenanigans.
Yeah, that's true.
You can't avoid them.
Yeah. So basically, Jacob. So your idea, what you cannot get there from here. This is the idea that the flow is here, right? But you can get to the flow, but only those who refuse to accept that and they try to get there will discover that there is here.
You got it.
So Jacob had to go through all that manipulations, and this is all strengthening his ego, right? This
Yeah.
is all.
Whether or not he had to, this was the journey he chose to take, either consciously or unconsciously. That was his active discipline that got him to the point. That prepared him.
Did he choose before his life this or whatever?
Yeah, we don't know. We don't know how it is we make choices, but it's very clear that we're not simply feathers floating in the wind. Somehow we choose our own race to run.
So he put all his stuff on the other side. This is him letting go of his ego stuff, or this is him letting his plans of salvation. But then after he wrestled with the angel, then he sent the caravans to Esau. Like he sent one caravan and another caravan and another caravan.
See, this is the human dilemma. On the one hand, we get in the flow, and on the other hand, we go into our fallback position. So he thought, maybe if I send him ahead, then I'll appease my brother. See, so he got back into his old mode of operation. See, we all do that. We get into the flow, then we fall into our backup strategies.
Any other thoughts of this, Grandpa?
No.
So then, how does Esau here represent conservation? But then he makes up with them, right? And everything. Any other ideas? Can we get any deeper into this? Okay, so then when Jacob fools his dad, this was another example of his manipulating, making things happen, and everything.
Yep.
So remember when Abraham, they were digging the wells, and Abraham, he didn't fight with the people. He just, he dig a well, but then some people, they covered up the well, but then he was just like, okay, and then he moved on, built a new well. It was actually a 3+1 pattern. He ended up making 4 wells, type of thing. But he digs a well, then the people dig it up because they want to fight with him. They want to be in the interpersonal, like us, for be superior to him. And he just moves on to a new well. Any thoughts with this?
No, but that's a good example. See, he had his plan, and he didn't get sucked into somebody else's plan. Their plan was to fight and compete with him, but he had his plan. He just kept moving on. He didn't alter his plan, but he eventually discovered that even though he stuck with the plan, he began to realize its limitations.
Yeah, that's that, Grandpa?
No.
And just one more with this, and then we can move on to hopefully deeper stuff, hopefully deeper stories and stuff. But hopefully, but the thing is, what about that? So okay, I forget what one I was going to talk about. Abraham. We were talking about Abraham and the wells. Dang. I had an idea of what I wanted to say, but then I forgot. All right, that should be good for now then.